It is our great honor and privilege to have with us Joseph Bruchac and Jesse Bruchac, who will be introducing themselves in a moment. And I would like to invite up some friends to open and welcome them with a token of our respect and honor and appreciation for their being with us on this beautiful afternoon. So could I ask Nahar Keefe Perry from Fresh Pond Meeting and Meg Hasbrook from Durham Friends Meeting and Drew Chase from Mount Toby and Andrew Grant from Mount Toby to join me in presenting a token of our appreciation. So do you want to join us? And we want to share this with you. Thank you so much for coming. Go ahead. Great. Wonderful. What? Oh, yes. And I wanted you to know that this is a bowl that was made specially by Lisa Graustein of Fresh Pond Three Rivers Meeting Worship Group. And in it is a package of tobacco wrapped in red cloth and some boughs of cedar. So thank you for being with us. Wulin Wini. Thank you. I would like now to ask two young members of our community, Willard and Alice May Tennell Peabody, to give a welcome to our guests in the Abenaki language.
Wai kwai ni dong bak, nuli da hong si bana nami hawa.
Hello, friends. We're glad to see you all.
Today we are joined by Joseph and Jesse Bruchac of the Nulhegan Band of the Abenaki people, the original inhabitants of this land who never gave it up and are still here. Storytellers and language keepers. These two work to preserve the Abenaki language and culture. Joe has written many books about Native peoples, and Jesse has written music in the Abenaki language, as well as teaching a language class that Alice and I have been attending for almost 2 years now. Uliuni, Kuli Payon Ba.
Thank you and welcome.
It's you, any Alice Star Willard. It's good to know that we're welcome. Kuli Payon Ba means we welcome you. We welcome you all. It's really wonderful to be here, and we welcome you all here to this place. Nikwambinia and Datsui Kluzi Bital Nombaiwi Kion Zi Noa Nongoniwi Yodali Yo Kluzwonganal Alno Baon Dwawonganek Taonlawi Yo Leo Kluzwonganal Udzi Mohican people Tamahiganek Ta Atsi Nana Walda Geek Udzi Yo Aki Liwitaman Ombana Ki Atsi Agmo Wadzonem Owes Kong Ka Wonganal Yodali Noa Nongoniwi Ta Pamgiskak Atsi Ni Wadzi and Datsui Ida Kirolami Koba Mziwi Awani Nodon Kohlai Gamik Kitsi Ulioni Udzi Sonkigwazi Zik Atsi.
Like what? I think we need some sound here.
Might be on the bottom. Uliuni, thank you.
Testing.
Mikodam Kagwinia Idam Nimitongwas.
Uh-huh. Thank you, my son.
Dakagwi.
Quite why need no bark. Hello, my friends. We greet you from this place, which is the land that was occupied and remains occupied by indigenous people of the Algonquin nations. In particular, we think of the Mohican people, the Mohican who are called that because many of them live along the Hudson River, the place where the river flows two ways. The Mohican and the Abenaki people call this their homeland. Nuat This is a place that we have cared for and shared for many generations, and will do so for many generations to come. We ask you to join with us in your minds and your hearts, and also in the things that you do, to both acknowledge our indigenous people and our relationship to this land, and to care for this land, as we have tried to do and will continue to try to do for the generations beyond ours, those yet to come. Olioni, Nitobak. Thank you, my friends.
Pita kula lokana mitongos kia ki radzam uli mikwaldigan. You have a good memory to remember all that. Thank you to my father and Mitongwis. I remember something that is an old bit of wisdom, and we're here to share a little bit of that with you. And it's that river that we just heard of, Tamahiganituk, where we get the word Mohican or Mohican from. It means a river that flows in two ways. It's a brackish water, the Hudson River, the ocean water flows up it. And so it gets its name, a water that's always changing, always moving. And because of that movement and that change, we're reminded of where we are today. There's been a great deal of change, but one thing that we can remember and that I'm often reminded of when I share this song is that long ago when we came together, we did so not using the highways like Route 4, which we drove on, and instead, not even the paths so much unless we were portaging. Instead, it was often wigwa olali kok alomiwe, within canoes. These canoes could be very large. Some were dug out, made of wood for traveling on lakes, others birch bark canoes used on the rivers, and those were the highways. They still can be. We can still travel on them to this day. But long ago, when we'd come to a village, like we've come here to spend some time with all of you, we would announce our arrival by way of song. My drum says something. It says Lin To Wongan, and that means a song. Lin To Wongan has the word in to in it. And as we heard from Alice and Willard, I do teach the Abenaki language. So we heard from my father, it's closely related to that of the Mohican language. It's an Eastern Algonquian language. And in it, I don't teach it to learn how to say things in English or how to say things in Abenaki. I learned the difference in how we would see things. And in the way that we see a song, we see the word into, and into means to welcome, to greet, or to adopt. That word intoa is to welcome someone in. The L at the beginning of into is the way or how. So when we say sing, linto, I'm saying sing, I'm actually encouraging you to welcome, to acknowledge, as we just heard that kulipayon ba, we welcome you from Alice and Willard. The idea of welcoming wasn't even done with words as much as it was done long ago with song. The word for song says the way or how we welcome, how we greet, or how we adopt one another. It's where we get that root, Lintowongan. And so keeping that in mind and that idea of traveling on the river as we would approach a village, a song would be sung to announce our arrival and announce who we were to those on shore, so that hopefully we'd hear another song back, a welcome song, to say, bring your canoes ashore. Let's spend some time together. We don't have too much time together, but the time we do have, let's share some song. Let's share some dance. A friendship dance would often be the first thing shared. Let's share story, and let's share other knowledge and wisdom with one another. So you'll mostly hear us speak today, but we would like you to hold on to any questions that may come to your mind, and we'll have a time for you to ask us as well, and we'll see where that leads us. But first, beginning with this song, Lilo Damanani Mitonga Swedzo Kami Spiwiyo, in two parts. First, as paddlers approaching, and then you'll hear the song change as we imagine that we are those on shore welcoming us. Yo guano de yo guano da. Yo guano de yo guano da. Gaiwani he hayo kyo he. Gaiwani he hayo kyo he. Gayawani he hayuk yuhe. Gayawani he hayuk yuhe. Ayo gano de yo gano da. Yo gano de yo gano da. Gayawani he hayuk yuhe. Gayawani he hayuk yuhe. Gayawani Gayawani ayukyuhi guano de guano de guano de guano da de guano de guano de guano de guano da de guano de guano de guano de guano de guano de guano da de guano de guano da de.
I want to say a word or two about stories before we continue. And that is that stories, I firmly believe, are the most powerful way we have of expressing what's in our minds and in our hearts and sharing it with others. I think we became human through stories, and that a story can do many things, but in particular, first of all, it's entertaining. That means people will listen to it and more likely remember it. But secondly, a story contains within it useful teachings, lessons that we can learn from and follow. We might not even understand that teaching when the story is told, but because it was interesting, we'll hold it in our mind, and someday that message may be made clear to us through things that happen. So a story always does those two things. Also, the Creator made all human beings in a similar way. It doesn't matter what language we speak, what color our skin is, how we identify ourselves in any way at all. We are all the same in that we all have within us the sound of the drum, the heartbeat sound, that music which is the first one we heard. We were dancing before we were born, and we know that drum sound as well as we know our mother's heartbeat. The drum reminds us, always listen to your mothers. And also, this earth is the drumbeat of life. So listen to the earth as well. A second thing that we all have are two ears. And that's because we were created in such a way that we could hear more than one side of every story, and also given only one mouth because we need to listen twice as much as we talk. Listening is a very powerful thing, and stories remind us of that. We're letting you hear a bit of our Abenaki language, or Abenaki. Either pronunciation is okay, by the way. Abenaki, Abenaki. In fact, I have friends among the Vermont Abenaki community. My dear friend, the late Homer St. Francis, used to say, I'm Abernaki, a very Vermont way of saying it. But it basically means people of the light, people of the dawn land. Ki is earth, which supports us all. Aben or Waban can mean the light, can mean the dawn, can also mean standing up, or something which elevates or lifts up. Every day, the new day lifts up for us. So Abenaki, people of the East, is actually what we were called by other Algonquin speakers a little further to the west. We call ourselves Al-Nobat. Al sort of means good or proper. Oba means a person. So we are Al-Nobat or Al-Nobak plural. And those names, Al-Nobat, Abenaki, all tell stories. So as I said, you're going to hear some of our language, and we believe that it's good just to listen and relax and not try to decipher it. Just let it be absorbed in you, and then I will tell you what was said. So let's just listen to a story. And as we listen, we always want to make sure people are awake and listening. And I learned this from elders like Maurice Dennis, Ray Fadden, many, many others, that if the storyteller says ho, then those who are listening need to say hey to show they're awake. Ho? Hey.
Noa no goniwi alomi wi udanak. Pomozo mi noak udaye no sa nidali. Mziwi awani uwazonem kagwi pita uligen kamwa agamomo onda ukizi tsabanau spiwi kadagik pomozowinowak ni wadzi imsalkil pomozowino uwazonem aquamal sawunganal ni wadzi gluskomba urolosa alomiwi kapiwi ta uli hon natami pakoligan udzi pomozowino.
Noa Nongoniwi, which means a long time ago. A long time ago, the people forgot the original teaching they had been given by the Creator. That teaching that we are supposed to share all things and our lives will be good. But the people began to be selfish. If they knew something, if they could do something, they just kept it to themselves. If they were good, for example, at medicine, they would not share it with anyone outside their family. If they were good at finding food plants in the forest, again, they would not share that knowledge. Or making things such as baskets, again, they would not share it. As a result, all the people were unhappy and all the people were suffering. And so it was the one we call Klus Gomba, the one who was the first to stand up and speak, the first one in the shape of a human being, who was given great power by the great mystery Katsinawask to do things, to change things, to move about the world and observe what was happening. He decided to do something. And so he made the first Pakoligan, the first hollow object you strike, the first drum.
Ta agama urulusa udzi odanak ta u papo na nihi pakoligana.
That means pakol is literally the thing you strike. So pak is to strike. Polygon is an object or a tool. Actually called a partridge, pakwasa, which means the one who drums. So that pakoligan is a very apt description of what a drum is. And began to sing a song.
Hey, guano de. Hey, guano de. Howie, guano de. Hey, guano de. Howie, hayuk, yoe. Hayuk, yoe. Howie, hayuk, yoe. Hayuk, yoe. Howie, hayuk, yoe. Ta kedagik pomozowinowak pimaga kasiwi ta sagil zandia wieldzi ikok ta agamo pimaga kasiwi ta amziwi awani songlamao zawonganak mina ta wiagig wawo ak.
People heard the sound of that drum as he entered their village. Their feet began to move. They came out of their lodges. Hearing that song, they began dancing. They reached out and joined hands with each other, dancing in a great circle, all dancing together. Walozi, all was good. And they sang together like this. Hey, guano de, awe guano de, hey, guano de, awe, ayo, yoe, ayo, yoe, awe, ayo, yoe. When they finished singing and dancing, they looked around. And they were all smiling. And for the first time in a long time, there was happiness in their hearts and on their faces. And Glus Gomba said to them, I give you this pakoligan, this drum, so that you may use it to bring people together, to welcome people, and always to remind us that in a circle, joined together, sharing all that we have, we can be happy. We can be fully ourselves. And so it is to this day. We have these friendship songs that we share. Often when we come to a new place, we are welcomed in by a friendship song brought into that community. And that idea of the drum and the song is central to what we live and remember as indigenous people. And we all, as human beings, can live and remember it as well. Oh.
In wazonam kadako ziki awon zi lila damana kina min kina min yo pikongan in wazonam in yodali liwi tamin a fipple flute. This is a flute that is little different than many indigenous flutes you may see. One that was played by people of this region all along the East Coast have internal reeds. You don't see the external reed. We also have external reed flutes, but this is more similar to the traditional style. The tuning, though, is the same. It's a pentatonic minor. I would like to create for you in a style that has been called parlando by musicologists. But I like the definition of it, which is to breathe in inspiration from the place that you are. If you're outside in the woods, if you're in an auditorium full of people, either way there's inspiration. All of you are inspiring me. And so as I breathe, in fact, inspire, when we look at language, has respire, has that word in it, fire, and all these other things that ignite and drive us. When we look at language, we learn so much. When we talk about it, we look at one another, we learn so much. When we join together in a circle, and this is a circle of word and a circle of song, and keeping that parlando word that I mentioned in mind, the idea of breathing in inspiration from all of you and then breathing out through the flute and creating new music is what I'd like to do. So this isn't anything that I've played before, but it is for this day and for all of you to act as inspiration for you as well. Something that inspired me beyond the breathing in of this moment that they say long ago helped us to shape the very first flute is a story that I'd like to tell you. And that's that there was a time when there were no songs at all. According to our stories long ago, there was a time when there was no language. You heard of Gluskomba. Glus is to speak. Gluskomba is known among the Wabanaki people by many names. Among Western Abenaki people here in Vermont, we say Gluskomba. To the east, and among Eastern Abenaki, the Penobscot, it's Gluskabe. You hear Omba, Abe, that change in sound. My father mentioned Alnomba as a human. In Penobscot, you'd say Alnabe. You hear that same change. If you go further south, you wouldn't say El at the beginning at all. You'd say Lenape. To the south, if you went further north, you'd lose the E at the end among the Passamaquoddy and Maliseet and say Alnup. If you went a little further north among the Mi'kmaq, you'd say Alnu. And that same word carries through. Gluskomba becomes Gluskabe, becomes Gluskap. All the same character, that one who spoke for the first time, speaking, one who stands on two legs, Gluskomba. Words were very important, but words could often be forgotten. And a way to remember words, something I use in language class a lot, is music. It's easy to remember a melody, and there is melody in language, but a song makes it so much easier to remember. And one thing we do well as human beings is to wanalda, forget. Kitsinawask, ho? Good memory. Ulimiko aldigan. Kitsinawask, the great mystery, saw how much we forgot, wanted us to remember and thought words would help. And so Gluskomba, literally the one often shaped by his own speech, is the way Gluskomba. Glus is to speak, Gluska is to make speech. Omba, the one that is, we say, shaped by their own talking, would tell stories and share story, that importance of story people, but people would forget. And Kitsinawask, the great mystery, saw this and decided to give something to us that would help us remember, to give us Linto Wongana. You may remember that too from my drum. Linto Wongana is a song, to give song to people, but realizing how much we forgot, Kitsinawask decided to give those songs to someone who never forgot, one who every year extends their wings out and remembers to fly south, and then luckily remembers to fly back north again and bring us the beauty of that gift they were given, those songs. because Katsinawas knew the birds never forgot their original instructions. And so one night, as this story is told among Haudenosaunee people, our relatives to the west of us a bit, the Iroquois, as well as among the Penobscot and Abenaki, this story is told that as all the birds were sleeping, they were having Luguaso Onganak, they were having dreams, but not different dreams. They all had the exact same dream. Ho! And then they woke up in the morning and they looked at each other with big smiles. We are gig wa wo ganao. They had great big smiles on their faces because that dream was so powerful. They all dreamed that they were going to be given songs. They didn't even know what songs were. They were so excited about it though, because Katsinawas was going to give it to them. And another thing that was really fun about this was there was going to be a contest. And contests are always fun. And the contest would be to see who could fly higher. And as in their dream, they saw as they flew down from the highest place they could reach, they would be given a song. They got excited. They gathered around a great fire. They knew the contest would happen in the morning. And they all started talking about what was going to happen. And the ones that had real little wings, the real little birds started to realize that the ones with longer, bigger wings and the bigger birds were probably going to fly a little higher than them. And the one with the great, big, huge wings, the eagle, was walking around the fire real proud. Oh, the eagle, Migaso, knew it was going to get a great song. It was so happy. It started to do something you should never do. It started to brag. Started to make fun of the other birds. Oh, look how little your wings are. I'm going to get an even better song than you. Well, there was one of those little birds that was being teased that got pretty upset and decided when eagle fell asleep to do something. It climbed right up in some of the shoulder feathers of that eagle as it slept, curled up and hid. Well, morning came, and just as promised, Womban, you heard about the word Wombanaki, Womban, the dawn. The sun rose and the contest began. The little birds started to fly up. The littlest of those birds couldn't fly very high at all and just came down and was humming. We know that one, Nanatasis. Nanatasis also in Abenaki means humming, or the mute one that barely has a song. Just flew up a little bit, but they can fly in all directions and they're so beautiful. And that humming is so beautiful from the hummingbird. And the other birds flew up a little higher and flew down with beautiful songs. Every one of them loved their song so much. And sure enough, just as Katsinawas thought, they never forgot their song. They sing it to this day. Well, finally, there were no more birds left but Migaso. Eagle. Eagle looked around and realized that it had won the contest and was so excited to fly down and have the best song of all. And just then that little bird who was hiding on its shoulder and those feathers hopped up and flew just a little bit higher. Oh, Migaso was so upset, but Migaso had already turned and was starting to fly back down to earth and didn't have a song at all. Its song had been stolen. Instead, it just made a loud whistle, kikoso. To this day, it loves that whistle. You'll hear it to this day. Migaso, the eagle. And that one that had the most beautiful song was so excited because it flew up a little higher, but it had cheated to get there, to reach those heights. And when it flew down, little wings all the way back down the ground, all the other birds just turned and walked away and wouldn't listen to that song and still won't. That one with the most beautiful song lives alone to this day. The birds have never forgotten how it cheated. We call that one the hermit thrush. Oh, if you're lucky enough to hear them, it is a beautiful song indeed. Those songs that birds have remind us of the coming of spring, of the warm wind that comes, that wind that helps create our voices, carry language, carry song, and bring the seasons. And in the long winters, when we don't have the birds to sing those beautiful songs, the invention of the pikongan, or the flute, can remind us of that coming of spring. Flutes are also used among indigenous communities across Turtle Island to propose marriage. Instead of buying a ring, an engagement ring, a young man would fashion a song and play it as a proposal of marriage. So keeping that tradition in mind, the song that I'll play is inspired by you, but of course the flute itself is inspired by that beauty of the wind and that beauty of the songs that the birds still remember and remind us of the gift that we have each morning when they first begin to sing those songbirds and say, Kitsiuliuni, thank you for the new day, for the omban, for the dawn, Sanghipozit Kizos, the coming of the sun.
I've noticed there are a lot of young people in the audience, including some who have cleverly disguised themselves with white hair. So for all you little kids out there, I thought I would tell another one of our Gluskomba stories, which is, of course, a lesson story, but one I've always enjoyed telling. And as is true with many of our stories, you may find more than one lesson in this tale. Now, long ago, things were somewhat different than they are today. Long ago, many of the animals were very, very large and dangerous. Now, this was the time before the coming of human beings. In our traditions, we say we humans were the last ones created. That's why we know so little about taking care of the earth. We really need to pay attention to our teachers, the animals, the birds, those living beings who have been here for so much longer than we have. They are all living. In fact, in the Abenaki language, we don't have, and Jesse could tell you more about this, gender. Instead, it's all one. It is humans, animals, males, females. They're living things. So we have those things that are living and those that are not. So instead of saying, what is that tree? We would say, who is that tree? So that time long ago, Gluskomba looked around and began to wonder how those animals who were so large and powerful would treat the first human beings they saw. So he called them all together in a great meeting. Ho! Hey! They sat around in a circle. Ho! Hey! And Gluskomba said, Nidolba kawasak, my friend animals. Soon the human beings will be here. I want to know what each of you will do when you see a human being for the first time. Come up and tell me. Now the first one to come forward was Awasos, the big bear. Bear was so large then, his shoulder was taller than the roof of this building. And when he came forward, Gluskomba said, what will you do when you see a human being? The bear said, I will swallow them whole. Gluskomba thought about that. Human beings, he thought, will not enjoy being swallowed by bears. I had better do something. So he said to that bear, Nidolba, my friend, you had some burrs caught in your fur. Come sit down in front of me and I will comb them out with my fingers. And the bear sat down. And Gluskomba began to run his hand along the bear's back. As he did so, indeed, he did comb out those burrs, but he also used a power that he has that we have too, which we usually misuse, the power to change things. And each time he did this, bear got smaller and smaller and smaller until it was the size that bears are to this day. And then Gluskomba said, what will you do now when you see a human being? Bear said, I will run away. That is usually what bears do to this day. Now the next one, Ho! Hey! The one next to come forward was the one we call Kichimoose. Kichimoose. Moose, you may know that name. Moose is moose. Means something like the strange one. Moose are really strange to look at, this is true. And that moose was so big, its hooves were this big around. It was taller than the tallest trees. Its antlers were sharp pointed like spears. When it's walked, kaboom, 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 kaboom. The earth shook beneath it. Gluskomba said, Nitomba moose, what will you do when you see an alnoba, a human being, for the first time? And Moose said, I will spear them with my horns, roll them over the trees, and stomp on them with my hooves until they're flat as your hand. Once again, Ho! Hey! Gluskomba thought long and hard about this. He decided that human beings would not get much personal satisfaction of being speared and flattened by moose. He knew he had to do something. So he said, Nitomba, my friend, you appear to be very powerful. Let us have a little contest. I will hold up my hands and you try to push me backward. And the moose said, By the way, let me teach you a word in Abenaki. Very good. I don't know if you remember it, but that's how we say yes. That moose said, and leaned forward. Ho!
Hey.
Put his whole set of antlers in one of Gluskomba's big hands and his nose in the other, and he began to push. And each time he pushed, he got smaller and smaller, and his nose got all smushed in to this day, and his antlers got all flattened out, and when he was done, Moose was only this tall. Gluskomba said, "Now what will you do when you see a human being?" And Moose said, "Run away." And that again is what most moose will do to this day. By the way, the plural of moose is musak, just in case you wondered. It's our word, not yours. Now the next one to come forward was the most dangerous, the most violent, the most vicious, the most frightening of all the creatures, the one we call Kitsimekwe. Kitsimekwe, terrible, terrible being, the giant, huge, violent, nasty, dangerous red squirrel. Bigger back then. That red squirrel came forward. And Gluskomba said, "Nidoba, McQuay, what will you do when you see a human being for the first time?" And McQuay said, "I will tear them apart. I will crush them under trees and rocks. I will destroy every human being I see." Ho!
Hey.
Once again, Gluskomba considered this carefully and decided that human beings would prefer not to be torn apart by red squirrels. And so he said, "Nidoba McWay, you have furs caught in your fur. Let me comb them out." And the squirrel sat down, and Gluskomba began indeed to run his hand along the squirrel's back, combing out the burrs and making it smaller and smaller. And because that red squirrel was so dangerous, so angry, so violent, he kept going until it fit right into his hand. Then that little squirrel jumped out, ran to the top of the tallest tree. You know, you still see red squirrels in the forest. You know, they still have a bad temper. Sometimes when you walk underneath a red squirrel, it will scream down at you in its terrible voice, "I will destroy you. I will crush you." And it will hurl down giant acorns and huge twigs and pine cones to try to destroy you, but no longer so dangerous. Now, one by one, Gluskomba taught to all of the creatures. Some, like Nulhegan, the deer, they just said, "We will run away." Others, like Malsum, the wolf, said, "I will go my way. They will go their way." Others, like little Matagwas, the rabbit, said, "I will run in a circle and be terrified." Finally, though, only one creature remained, sitting in the middle of the clearing, wagging its tail. It was the one we call Dog. And Gluskomba said to Dog, "My friend, what will you do when you see a human being? Will you hurt them in some way?" The dog said, "No, I've been waiting for them to come. I want to be their best friend. I want to play with them. I want to hunt with them. I want to live in their houses with them. I want to climb in bed with them." And Gluskomba looked at that dog and he smiled. He said, "Nidoba, you will be a better friend than many of the human beings deserve." And so it is that we will call you Alamos, the one who walks beside us, the one who walks with us. So it is to this day that of all the animals that were here, it is always the dog who is by our side, our best friend, a guide, sometimes better than we deserve. That is the story of how Gluskomba changed the animals. Ho!
Hey. We'd love to hear your voices, as I mentioned. Just one more thing about Almus, the one that's continually going or walking by our side. I remember learning from my father, and we like to credit those people like Maurice Dennis, others, Cecile Mawanolet, who I haven't mentioned yet, who really, really taught me so much of the Abenaki language. So many of these people who have helped us to be able to stand here today, without their wisdom that they shared with us, we wouldn't have this wisdom to share with you, the responsibility to share it. And this is some wisdom I learned from my father about those dogs. They say that when we pass, our story is that we go and we come from a place called Alaquasondi, which is the Star Road. It leads to ones we call the Seven Sisters or the Pleiades, that is the place where our souls go and return from over and over again. In some accounts, Ombana Ki, you may have heard Omba before, that sound. in Abenaki, it's also the same sound as ompasum or opossum. Omp means to go and return again. And opossum seems like they can die and come back to life again. And some translate this as that idea of our journey that goes and comes again, the way the sun leaves and then comes again, as if it has a death, and then it returns. Every day is like a new life. And that we travel to those stars, to the Pleiades, and then we return back through them into our bodies here on Earth through a thing we call Ma'ahlakwis, the gathering of stars, or the ash tree. The ash tree is that one that we all came from, that Luskomba fired arrows into, and the first people stepped out of the Ma'ahlakwis. Alakwis is a star. Alakwis Ondi is a star road. To get to the star road, though, it's way up in the sky. There was a story about some hunters who made it up there once. I don't have time to tell that. But to get there, they say there's a log. And what my father told me is that that log likes to tip over. It's kwitkwikla, it's a tippy log. But on the other side of that log are all the dogs that we ever owned in our lives. And they hold that log steady for us. So take good care of your dogs. I'm going to sit back down. If there are any questions, I'll pop up and maybe point some people out. Usually when we point, though, it's not polite to do it with our leguat. Leguat is your pointer finger, and that's usually meant to either curse, mazala meg something, or to wish something not well. So I'll usually point with our lips, but I'm going to use my whole hand if I see someone. So you know, if you want to raise your hand, I will be pointing a little, but it is not a curse or a bad wish. I wish you all well. Ulala meg. Any questions?
I've just been served. I have to appear in court tomorrow at night.
To raise your hand is omp kana omp omp. Remember, rise up. Omban aki ombasam omp domp kana. Raise it up. Microphone. Thank you.
Hi. One of the things you said that I keep thinking about is how when you learn a new language, it's not, this is the word that's equivalent to this word. It's this very different way of thinking. And I'm curious for you with English speakers, what is the biggest cognitive hurdle that you have to really turn your mind around when you're learning and where you're trying to teach people this language? That's the hardest thing or initially for folks to get. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, a real simple word that won't help at all is to remember that it is a holophrastic language. And I know that didn't help at all. But it really is the hardest thing to get our heads around. And what that means is that a whole phrase in a single word. And this idea of articles like or the are part of the way in which we shape the word. So the word itself holds so many things. We use separate little words often in Indo-European languages end up being one constructed word. To get to that takes a long time, to let go of all those things that we feel. Another thing is, one thing we do at Middlebury, I'm the director of the Middlebury Language School of Abenaki, is we really leaned into this summer especially, try and communicate with me as if you are a 4-year-old, and I'll try and communicate with you as if I'm a 4-year-old as well. We want to think about these great big things. We want to translate all of this stuff and say it, and really we need to begin at a level where we can begin. So keeping it simple really helps a lot to approach those great big constructions of words. Yeah, does word order matter? Ultimately, in some constructions, it does. The difference between awani na, who is that, and na awani, that one, right? One is pointing someone out and one is asking a question. So at a basic level, yes, but ultimately because it's word phrase based, you can say things in any number of ways. Some things will appear on first and last words, and that's just learning those patterns. And they're nothing like English. The biggest lesson is everything I just said, holophrastic, all of these things. It's just not thinking in English and thinking in a new way. That's the joy of learning a language, because when you think in a new way, you begin to see and hear the world in a new way.
Why don't you share one of the longest words we have,
Yeah, my kids love this word too. Wizo imonita bai kizo son kanan kawalagi adiganal is one word. And it says, it answers some questions. One, there's no word for gold. So the search for gold in the Northeast was lost. Wizowimoni means yellow money. And it became, it's a loan word of money plus wizonwi, which means yellow. Wizowimoni is golden. Wizowimoni tip is your head dip, or your measure, or double dock is the one that holds things in balance. Our own dip, or the creator. So the measure that is golden, Wizowimoni tabai kizos, the sun, the measure of the sun, the golden measure of the sun. Wizowimoni tabai kizos onkawa lagi adiganal is a verbal shape classifier. It lets us know that it is long and connected like a chain, a long cylinder type thing. And that's a pocket watch. Wizowimoni tabai kizos onkawa lagi adiganal is literally the golden divider of the sun that's connected to us by a long chain.
Yeah, also we could say the word for clock or a watch, which is also shows a different way of seeing things or thinking of things.
Papizo quazik. Papizo, papi is to play or automatically do something, to automatically make noise for no good reason.
We have a lot of fun with the language.
Which, if you look around you, there's plenty of ways to tell what time it is. The sun, to tell what time of the month it is. The moon, to look at the stars, to know where we are. So a clock did seem kind of like a useless noisemaker.
Okay, over there. Want to give her the microphone?
Yeah, if we have someone passing the mic, yeah. Uliuni, thank you.
I'm going to share a question I heard over here from one of these young ladies. We heard about the dogs. We want to hear about the cats.
You know, there were no domestic cats in North America, so we had to find another word for it. Didn't we use the French word, Jess? Minu? But there was also the
Bizouis.
yeah.
Bizouis is one way, and that just means a little bobcat.
Yeah.
Bizouis is a little bobcat, and that was another one of my teacher, Elie Joubert, Cecile's son. For about a decade we taught the language together, and his cat was always Bizouis. That was the name, little bobcat. But then the other place where the Abenaki language has survived is in Quebec, at Odanak and Woolanak, in these communities which were predominantly within French-speaking Canada. People called the cat Minuis. Minu from French, and is little. Minuis, so little one. And also dogs there became amis, which is a little friend, also from French. So there is an influence of both French and English on our languages, just like our languages affected English. There are many, my father mentioned some, but there are lots of loan words. I'll say some others that you all know. Moccasin is a shoe. It means a foot covering, moccasin. Say it really well. Tomahawk, we'd say tamahigan is something that transversely cuts, like the Tamahiganituk, the Hudson River. There are many, many animal names. You heard moose, also caribou, makanlibu, the shoveler. That is an Abenaki word that has been loaned into English, an Algonquin word. There are hundreds and hundreds of place names that come from Algonquin languages, and you know many of them. There's one right near here, Bomacine. Bomacine, or firekeeper, is an Abenaki word.
Of course, we also had the big cat, the pitalo, the long tail, which is the mountain lion, cougar, puma.
Yeah, the animal of Vermont, the bitonlo, the great tail. They say when Gluskomba was changing the animals, there was one that was hiding in the trees. It was bitonlo, but it wasn't bitonlo yet. It was a cat. It was a great big cat. And Gluskomba had to sneak up behind it and reached out to grab it because he couldn't catch it. And it jumped. If you ever see a mountain lion jump, they can jump. And even Gluskomba with his great magic could barely catch the tip of its tail. And he squeezed it as tight as he could, but that mountain lion got away. But its tail got all stretched out. And now the mountain lion has as long a tail as their entire body. And the end of their tail is all black from where Gluskomba, we say, squeezed so hard to try and catch it, but was never able to change it. And the bitonlo is one that has been historically very dangerous to people, ambush predators. So we have to be careful of those mountain lions that now are no longer, unfortunately, here, but in the Midwest and other places.
But then again, they may be here. You very seldom see
They may be here, yes, and back.
And the thing about the mountain lion is people, when they had their pack baskets on their back, sometimes you would have a pack basket with two sharp stakes connected to it, sticking up, because it's known the mountain lion would attack from behind, just like tigers do or other big cats. So that would, if a mountain lion tried to attack, it would hit the sharp stakes and be unable to be successful in its predation.
There's
Other
a question
questions?
way in back on how Damawinia Neil Z. I'm pointing with my hand. Uliuni.
We also have friends on Zoom, so
Uliuni,
heard at one time that some indigenous folks have no derogatory words towards children, or they view children in a different way. And I'm just curious, if you could talk a little bit about the language that you use around children and correcting children.
It's a really, really good point. The children are so important. Sankigwazidzik, those that are coming, those who are still coming. To think, as the Haudenosaunee would say, in terms of 7 generations yet to come, is our responsibility as people, that we should always think of those yet to come. And we'd love to do one last thing for you as far as sharing. And that, I noticed my dad has the flute, is to sing a song which is for the children. It's called Tutuwas. Tutuwas means infants, those that are still at the breast, literally, Tutuwas. This sings for them so that they may grow up straight and tall, and it sings and is called the Little Pines. The pine tree among the Haudenosaunee people, or the Iroquois, is a symbol of peace. Among our Abenaki people, we are Nulhegan band of the Coasuk Abenaki. Villages would grow in places where the white pine tree, Coasuk means among the little pines, where the pines are growing. This is a place along rivers where villages would be. We are said to be in relation to trees. To the south of us, among Wampanoag people, the creation story isn't that people were made of ash, but that we were actually made of white pine trees. So we see a real connection to the white pine. Finally, I'll say the white pine gives us vitamin C in its needles and manhakongana, starvation food, in its bark. All of these things are important. In this song, we say we should be like those great big tall trees and hold out our arms like they do their branches to protect the young, so that they can grow up straight and tall and give medicine, so they can grow up straight and tall and dance like all of us. When this song is sung among Penobscot and other communities, it is the mothers in the community who dance and the children who sing it for them to take that place. They're the future singers, the Nikonintok, the future lead singers. Each verse, the first verse says, dance numjim takmu, like a crab, which says to the mothers they have to dance side to side. Crabs move sideways. Then wiwini takmu, I've been saying uliuni, it means in a circle, or wiwini nabisaki, Winnipesaukee, the land around the lakes. Wiwini means spin around. That's telling the mothers to spin. And then kaga, which is backwards, and kutakwes, which is forwards. So in each verse, you hear different instructions from the children singing to their mothers and thanking them and having them dance. So this is that song, Tutuwas, for the children, or Little Pines.
I have a quick question. May I?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm on Zoom. Zooming. Excuse me. I wanted to. I have 2 questions. One is quick questions, because looking forward to hearing that flute. But I heard you use the term awani.
Awani.
I come from the West, and there's a beautiful meadow called Awani Meadow there in Yosemite. I want anyway.
Awani means someone or who in Abenaki. Awani.
Oh, okay.
And there are Algonquian languages all across America. So
California, throughout Canada,
Cheyenne, Blackfoot.
Cree, all of these different languages are very similar. Their construction and often words show up from place to place.
I will say one funny joke, and then I want to sing this song with my father, and then we'll hear your other question. So we've included the people on Zoom. Uliuni. We say that I mentioned how things get shortened. Gluskomba becomes gluskabe, becomes gluskap. Awani eventually becomes awen, and then it becomes wen. if you go to Passamaquoddy, when, it sounds like we're saying when. And so they say, and when you go to Maine among the Passamaquoddy, if you hear an owl, they don't say who, they say when.
Okay, there you go.
The answer to that is Nikwambi. Now. Num jum tak mu se tutuash. 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 Kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo. Huevene tak mu se tutuash. 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 Kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo, kwe hawaneo. Yo zi I won't see sock. That is a song for the children. I won't see sock.
Oh,
Do we
time
have?
for one, maybe two more questions
Yeah.
before we conclude.
I won't see so.
You like Cardi B, throw the microphone. Never mind.
Earlier you said that dogs try to stay like with their friends, but foxes are dogs and they run away most of the time.
A wonkosis is a fox. Wonkosis. Yeah. You know, wonkosis don't want to live with us. The wonkosis, the mulsam, mulsamis, the coyote, the wolf, and the fox are all definitely closely related to almus. They're all canines, but the almus is unique because that one wants to live with us. Unlike the good point, unlike the fox. And although you have a book about fox, and
Foxhole, yeah.
yeah, and there are certainly stories about fox that we tell.
Any final question before we conclude?
See a hand right here. Uliuni.
So one of the big questions that Western European theologians debate is if the Creator God is so good and intends everything for our good, why are there mosquitoes? Seriously, big discussion. So I'm curious what stories you have about the creation of mosquitoes and black flies.
Oh, we have those stories. We definitely have those stories. Tell it really quickly, Jess. And
long ago, there were no mosquitoes here, but there was a really, really lazy man. And in order for his newborn baby to get a name, they had to travel to his wife, his Nizwiya, his other's home, because it was the mother who the clan and who the family name came through. He didn't want to do that because he was lazy. He was so lazy that he waited until the days got so short that they might not even make the journey through a deep, dark forest between his village and hers. And sure enough, as a short version of this story goes, they got stranded as they were traveling, but not so stranded that he didn't notice a wigwam that suddenly appeared. Wigwam, another Algonquin word, it means a residence, a home. He noticed a wigwam and he entered it, but this wigwam was in fact the home of a terrible creature, one we call a vampire skeleton. He ended up being eaten by that vampire skeleton as he slept very soundly inside of its trap, which was that home. And that woman, Nizwia, and their small child made it to her village and returned the next day and found not a wigwam, but a pile of sticks that had maybe been a wigwam hundreds of winters ago. They burned it, and as they burned it, out of it came a white mataguas, a white rabbit, which, as my father said, was the spirit of her lazy husband and now has to run in circles every time it sees any predator to this day. It can never be lazy again. And then that fire that was that wigwam of that vampire skeleton exploded into a terrible cloud of the very first pigwasak, the very first mosquitoes. And so that one still tries to drink our blood to this day.
And that is where the theologians are wrong. They're looking at a human-centered universe. Everything depends on people. Will it turn off?
I think it might be battery 95.
Yeah. The theologians have it wrong if they're looking at everything is all centered on human beings. Everything is not for our comfort. And the black flies and the mosquitoes are part of the ecosystem. And if we lose a little blood, c'est la vie. So I think that you have to look at things beyond just our human viewpoint. And that's, again, where I think theologians and philosophers are unable to move toward an indigenous view of the world, which is much, much bigger.
We're going to close with our favorite song, which is actually, I'm going to Nadodama, Kinadodomo wa, Kinadodomo ba, Nziwiawani Yodali Ibita, Nikwambi Kita. Awakato Kia Kiwazanem Nisno Dawago Ta Ibita Pazagwin Udon. Each have 2 ears and only one mouth. So we wanted to just take a moment to use those ears and just have a moment of reflective silence before we end. Kitsiuliuni. Nikwomi and Wazanem Pazgwin Kadak Lintongan Kion Yotzi Yo Lintongan Idamo Kitsiuliuni.
Ulipamkani, may you travel well. Uligawi, may you sleep well. Uliguasi, may you dream well. Itomba, my friends.
Hego, Hegane, Queo he, Queo he, Guanaldia, Guano de, Guanaldia, Guano de, Guanaldia, Guano da, Hea, Heo, Deoga, 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 Deoga. Guanaldia, Guano de, Guanaldia, Guano de.